The alarm bells rang through the massive space station. Crixtal jumped up from his chair and looked at the screens in front of him. His 6 eyes moved quickly across the data flowing down the monitors. Something was wrong. For 20 years, Crixtal had worked as a communications officer on Velthar Prime. The station was the biggest listening post in the galaxy. Every day, millions of messages passed through their systems. Most were boring trade reports or family messages between planets. But today was different. "What is it now?" asked his partner Vextal from across the room. The older alien was tired and wanted to go home. He had been working double shifts for weeks. "I think we have a problem," Crixtal said. His voice was quiet but worried. "This signal came from the Sol system. You know where those new humans live." Vextal laughed. "The humans? Those little pink creatures? They barely know how to fly between their own planets. What could they possibly send that would worry us?" Crixtal did not laugh. He stared at the screen and read the data again. The numbers did not make sense. According to the message, the humans were building something big, something that should not be possible. "Look at these power readings," he said, pointing to his screen. "This ship design shows energy output levels that are 10 times higher than our best warships. That cannot be right." Vextal walked over and looked at the screen. His forearms crossed as he studied the numbers. After a few minutes, he shook his head. "The humans must have made a mistake," he said. "New species always get confused with their math when they first start building spaceships. Remember when the Zorlak first tried to make a warp drive? They thought they could power it with solar panels. But Crixtal was not satisfied. He had studied human transmissions for months. These creatures were strange. They did not think like other species. Where most aliens would build bigger ships with more weapons, humans seemed to focus on making their ships smarter and faster. The message he was reading contained detailed blueprints for something called the HSS Indomitable. The ship was not very big compared to Imperial warships, but the technology described in the plans was incredible. The humans wrote about something called quantum fold drives. They mentioned AI systems that could think faster than any computer in the Empire. They talked about weapons that could hit targets from distances that seemed impossible. "I need to report this," Crixtal said. "Report what?" Vextal asked. "That a species that just learned how to leave their home system thinks they can build super ships. The admirals will laugh at you." Crixtal looked at his partner. Vextal was probably right. The Galactic Empire had existed for thousands of years. They had conquered hundreds of worlds and controlled millions of species. Humans had only been in space for a few decades. How could they possibly build something better than Imperial technology? But something about the human transmissions bothered him. The math was perfect. Too perfect. Every calculation was exact. Every measurement was precise. This was not the work of a species making mistakes. He decided to dig deeper into the human communications. What he found made his blood run cold. The humans were not just building one ship. They were building an entire fleet, and they were doing it in secret. Most of their transmissions were coded, but Crixtal was good at his job. He had learned to break codes from dozens of different species. What he discovered was a complete military program. The humans called it Project Indomitable. They were developing new types of weapons, new types of shields, and new types of engines. But most shocking of all, they were doing it all at the same time. Most species in the galaxy developed technology slowly. They would work on weapons for a few years, then work on engines, then work on shields. It took decades to build a single advanced warship. But the humans were different. They seemed to work on everything at once, and they were doing it fast. Crixtal found messages between human scientists and engineers. They talked about using something called gaming technology to test their ship designs. They mentioned AI systems based on neural networks. They discussed materials that could change shape and strength depending on what hit them. None of this should be possible for such a young species. He printed out all the data and walked to the office of Admiral Vosketh. The Admiral was the commander of this section of space. He was old, experienced, and very proud of the Empire's power. "Admiral," Crixtal said as he entered the office, "I have something you need to see." Admiral Vosketh looked up from his reports. His large head turned toward the communications officer. "This better be important, Krikstal. I have a meeting with High Command in 1 hour." Krikstal placed the printed data on the Admiral's desk. "Sir, I intercepted these transmissions from the human home system. I think they are building warships that could be a threat to the Empire." The Admiral picked up the papers and read them quickly. After a few minutes, he started laughing. "A threat?" he said. "These humans think they can build ships better than ours. We have been building warships for 10,000 years. Our smallest patrol boat could destroy their entire planet." "But sir," Krikstal said, "look at the technical specifications. These numbers suggest technology far beyond what we thought they possessed." Admiral Vosketh threw the papers back on his desk. "Numbers can lie, officer, especially when they come from species that do not understand what they are doing. The humans probably copied some old Imperial designs and changed a few numbers. They have no idea what real military power looks like." Krikstal felt frustrated. He had studied these transmissions for hours. The technology described in the human plans was not copied from anyone. It was completely new, different from anything he had ever seen. "With respect, sir," he said, "I think we should at least warn the border patrol ships. If even half of what these plans show is real, we could have a problem." The Admiral stood up from his chair. His massive form towered over Krikstal. "Officer, let me explain something to you," he said. "The Galactic Empire controls 3,000 star systems. We have fleets that could destroy entire solar systems. We have weapons that can crack planets in half. Do you really think that a species that just invented faster-than-light travel could threaten us?" Krikstal wanted to argue, but he knew it was useless. The Admiral had made up his mind. Like most Imperial officers, he could not imagine that any young species could develop technology better than theirs. "No, sir," Krikstal said quietly. "Good. Now file those reports in the low-priority section and get back to work. We have real threats to worry about." Krikstal walked back to his station feeling defeated, but he could not shake the feeling that something big was coming. The human transmissions continued to arrive every day, and every day they showed more advanced technology. He decided to keep monitoring the human communications in his spare time. If the humans really were building what their plans suggested, the Empire needed to know about it, even if his superiors did not want to listen. 3 months later, Krikstal would wish that someone had taken his warnings seriously. But by then, it would be too late to stop what the humans had set in motion. 2 years after humanity's first contact with galactic civilization, Ambassador Changmin-O stood in the Great Hall that had once housed the Galactic Council. The chamber looked the same, but everything else had changed completely. Where once hundreds of alien delegates had gathered to make decisions for the galaxy, now only a few dozen remained. Some represented the surviving fragments of once great empires. Others spoke for species that had voluntarily joined the new human-led government. Changmin looked out at the assembled aliens and felt a mixture of satisfaction and sadness. Humanity had won, but victory had come at a terrible cost to the galaxy. "Honored representatives," he began, his voice carrying clearly through the translation system. "We gather today to formally establish the Terran Federation and discuss the future of galactic civilization." In the front row, old Kethlon of the Vorthak Empire listened with weary eyes. He was one of the few beings who remembered the warnings he had given so long ago. His people had been smart enough to surrender early, and were now protected members of the new Federation. Behind him sat the representatives of what remained of the great powers. Emperor Vashishtai was gone. He had died in a final, desperate battle against human forces 6 months earlier. The Zephyrian Empire now consisted of 3 star systems under human protection. War Prince Gexmore had suffered a different fate. After the destruction of the Krillian military, he had tried to organize a resistance movement. The humans had captured him during a raid on his secret base. He was now serving a life sentence in a human prison, his warrior pride broken by the reality of total defeat. The old system failed, Changmin continued. It was based on the idea that might makes right, that stronger species could dominate weaker ones. This led to endless conflict and suffering. He paused, looking around the chamber at faces that showed mixtures of fear, resignation, and in a few cases, hope. The Terran Federation is built on different principles. We believe that all intelligent species have the right to exist and develop according to their own nature, as long as they do not threaten others. Ambassador Ilex of the Centauri Trade Federation raised one of her tentacles. What about species that have already threatened others? What about us? It was a fair question. The Centauri had participated in the original attempt to force humans to surrender their weapons. They had paid a heavy price. Their defense network was gone, their military was disbanded, and their government existed only because humans allowed it to. The past is the past, Changmin replied. What matters now is the future. Species that accept Federation membership and agree to our basic principles will be protected and helped to rebuild. And those who refuse? Asked a delegate from one of the smaller powers. Changmin's expression hardened slightly. Those who refuse will be left alone as long as they do not threaten Federation members, but they will receive no protection if other hostile forces decide to attack them. The message was clear. In the new galaxy, you were either under human protection or you were on your own, and there were still dangerous forces in the dark between stars, pirates, rebels, and worse things that the old Galactic Council had never been able to control. Back on Earth, President Na Young-seo was addressing humanity's homeworld from her office in Seoul. Her speech was being broadcast to human colonies throughout the solar system and to the new human settlements that were being established on captured alien worlds. My fellow humans, she began. 2 years ago, we were alone in the galaxy, uncertain of our place among the stars. Today, we are the leaders of a new galactic civilization. The image behind her showed a map of human-controlled space. What had once been a single star system now encompassed hundreds of worlds across dozens of sectors. Not all of them were inhabited by humans. Most were actually alien worlds that had requested human protection. But with great power comes great responsibility, President Seo continued. We must never forget that we became powerful not because we wanted to conquer others, but because we had to defend ourselves. In the audience, Director Kyung-ho Bae of the Galactic Reconstruction Authority nodded in agreement. His organization was responsible for rebuilding the civilizations that humanity had been forced to destroy. It was a massive task that would take generations to complete. The alien empires made the mistake of believing that strength was only about weapons and ships, the president said. They forgot that true strength comes from the ability to build, to create, to help others become better than they were. But not everyone was celebrating humanity's victory. In a secure conference room deep beneath the federal building, General Mi Sun-jung was meeting with the top military commanders of the Terran Defense Force. We have won the war, she told them, but we may be losing the peace. The screens around the room showed intelligence reports from across human space. There were signs of unrest on some of the alien worlds. Resistance movements forming among species that resented human rule, and disturbing reports of human colonists who were beginning to treat alien populations as inferior. We became galactic. Rulers almost by accident, General Young continued. We were just trying to survive, but now we have to figure out how to rule wisely. Admiral Sung-ho, now serving as military advisor to the Federation Council, studied the reports with concern. The problem is that we expanded too fast. We took control of hundreds of worlds without having time to understand their cultures or needs. And some of our people are starting to act like the old alien empires, added General Jae-sung. They think that winning the war means we can do whatever we want. It was a serious concern. Humanity had fought so hard against alien domination that they were in danger of becoming dominators themselves. Captain Yuri, now serving as Director of Alien Affairs, had been working on this problem for months. We need to establish clear principles, she said. Rules that apply to humans and aliens equally. No species should be treated as superior or inferior. That sounds good in theory, General Young replied. But theory is not the same as practice. We have humans who have lost friends and family to alien attacks. They are not going to be very sympathetic to alien concerns. Meanwhile, in the depths of space, there were signs that humanity's enemies had not given up completely. Intelligence Officer Boram Shin stood in her command center aboard the stealth ship Night's Edge, studying reports from her network of agents. "Ma'am," her aide reported, "we have detected unusual activity in the Outer Rim. Several groups of alien refugees have been gathering in the abandoned systems beyond the Galactic Edge." Boram frowned. "What kind of activity?" "Unknown, but our sensors have detected energy signatures consistent with weapons manufacturing. They may be trying to build a new fleet." It was not surprising. The galaxy was full of aliens who had lost everything to human expansion. Some of them were bound to want revenge, even if it meant certain death. "Increase surveillance in that sector," Boram ordered, "but do not take any action yet. Let us see what they are actually planning before we decide how to respond." Back in the Galactic Council chamber, Chang Min was wrapping up his speech. "The Terran Federation offers a choice," he told the assembled delegates. "You can join us as equal partners in building a better galaxy, or you can go your own way. But the days of the strong bullying the weak are over." After the formal session ended, Kethalon approached Chang Min privately. The old Vorthax exoskeleton was showing signs of age, and his movements were slower than they had been when he first tried to warn the galaxy about humans. "I tried to tell them," Kethalon said quietly. "I tried to warn them what would happen if they attacked your people." Chang Min nodded respectfully. "I know. I have read the records of that council session. You understood something that the others did not." "What did I understand?" "That humans are not like other species. We do not fight for territory or resources or glory. We fight for survival. And when survival is at stake, we will do anything necessary to protect ourselves and those we care about." Kethalon was quiet for a moment. "And now you must learn to live with the consequences of that nature. You have become the most powerful species in the galaxy almost by accident. What will you do with that power?" It was the question that kept Chang Min awake at night. Humanity had proven that they could destroy their enemies and conquer their worlds. But could they learn to govern wisely? Could they avoid becoming the same kind of oppressive force that they had fought so hard to defeat? "We will try to do better," Chang Min replied. "We will make mistakes because all species make mistakes, but we will try to learn from them." As the delegates began to leave the chamber, Chang Min remained behind, looking up at the great dome that showed the stars beyond. Somewhere out there, human ships were patrolling the space lanes, keeping the peace with the threat of overwhelming force. Human administrators were learning to govern alien populations with customs and needs they barely understood. Human colonists were settling new worlds and trying to build lives among species that had once been their enemies. The galaxy was at peace, but it was an uneasy peace. Humanity had won through superior strategy and ruthless determination, but those same qualities could easily turn them into the kind of oppressors they had fought against. The real test was just beginning. It was one thing to win a war. 1 year after the destruction of the Zephyrian Grand Fleet, the galaxy had grown very quiet. But it was not the quiet of peace. It was the quiet of fear. In the hidden depths of space, humanity was preparing for something that no alien species had ever imagined. Admiral Yunji Huang stood in the command center of the stealth ship Shadow's Edge, watching as her fleet moved through the darkness between stars. Around her, dozens of ships equipped with the latest human technology drifted silently toward their targets. "Status report," she ordered quietly. "All task forces are in position," replied her communications officer. "Task Force Alpha is approaching the Krillian shipyards at Gex Prime. Task Force Beta is moving toward the Zephyrian military base at Cathera 7. Task Force Gamma has reached the Centauri defense platforms." Yunji nodded. For months, human intelligence agents had been gathering information about alien military installations throughout the galaxy. Now it was time to use that information. "Signal all task forces," she commanded. "Operation Nightfall begins in 60 seconds. The aliens had made a terrible mistake. After losing 2 major fleets to human defenders, they assumed that humanity would stay in their own system and wait for the next attack. They did not understand that humans had never been a defensive species. When humans were threatened, they did not just fight back. They eliminated the threat forever. At Gex Prime, Commander Yuri Moon led her strike team through the outer defenses of the massive Krillian shipyard. The facility was the size of a small moon, protected by energy shields and automated weapons that should have been impossible to penetrate. But human engineers had been studying alien technology for over a year. They knew exactly where the weaknesses were. "Stealth fields activated," Yuri whispered into her communicator. "All ships, begin your approach." The human ships moved like ghosts through the alien defenses. Their hulls were coated with materials that absorbed sensor radiation, making them nearly invisible. Their engines ran cold and silent, leaving no heat signature for alien sensors to detect. The first the Krillians knew of the attack was when their main reactor complex exploded. Multiple breaches in the primary hull, the facility commander reported. In panic, "We are under attack, but I cannot see any enemy ships." That was because Yuri's teams were not using ships for the final assault. They were using something much more frightening: human soldiers. The boarding pods struck the shipyard like meteors, punching through the hull and delivering teams of Marines directly into the heart of the facility. But these were not ordinary soldiers. They were equipped with powered armor that had been built using captured alien technology, armed with weapons that could penetrate any known defense, and trained in tactics that the aliens had never encountered. They fought like demons, from the depths of space. Meanwhile, at the Zephyrian military base at Cathara 7, General Jae-Sung Kim was demonstrating humanity's mastery of coordinated warfare. His attack did not rely on stealth or surprise. Instead, it was a perfectly timed assault that hit the base from 12 different directions at exactly the same moment. "All units commence bombardment," he ordered. Human ships opened fire with weapons that the Zephyrians had never seen before. Instead of energy beams or plasma bolts, they fired solid projectiles accelerated to incredible speeds. The kinetic rounds punched through alien shields as if they were not there, causing massive explosions as they struck the base's structure. But the bombardment was just the beginning. As the alien defenders struggled to respond to the attack, human dropships descended from orbit, carrying specialized teams with a very specific mission. They were not there to destroy the base. They were there to capture it intact. Intelligence Officer Boram Shin had spent months studying the layout of Cathara 7. She knew exactly where the command centers were located, which systems controlled the base's defenses, and how to disable them without causing permanent damage. Team 1, secure the main computer core, she broadcast to her units. Team 2, take the communication center. Team 3, I want those defense platforms offline in the next 10 minutes. The Zephyrian defenders fought bravely, but they were facing an enemy that seemed to know their base better than they did. Human soldiers moved through the corridors with perfect knowledge of where they were going, striking at critical systems with surgical precision. Within 3 hours, the strongest military base in the Zephyrian Empire was under human control. But the most shocking assault was happening at the Centauri Trade Federation's defense platforms. Captain Dongsu Park led a small fleet of human ships that seemed laughably outgunned by the massive orbital fortresses. The Centauri had built their defenses according to traditional galactic military doctrine. The platforms were heavily armored, powerfully armed, and positioned to provide overlapping fields of fire that could destroy any attacking fleet. They had not considered the possibility that the attacking fleet might not try to destroy them. Begin Phase 1, Dongsu ordered. Human ships scattered in all directions, moving in patterns that seemed random and chaotic. The Centauri defense computers struggled to lock onto targets that refused to fly in predictable formations, but the seemingly random movement was actually carefully calculated. Dr. Su-Young Lee had developed new algorithms that could predict exactly where alien weapons would fire based on their programming. The human ships were not dodging randomly. They were dodging with mathematical precision. As the defense platforms wasted their ammunition firing at targets that were never where they expected them to be, the second phase of the human attack began. Small, fast ships detached from the main human fleet and raced toward the platforms. They looked like missiles, but they were actually carrying something much more dangerous than explosives. They were carrying people. The boarding teams struck. the platform simultaneously, cutting through the outer hull with tools that could slice through any known material. Once inside, they moved with the efficiency of a computer virus, taking control of critical systems and turning the platform's own weapons against each other. Within hours, the entire Centauri defense network was either destroyed or under human control. As reports of the simultaneous attacks reached the remaining galactic governments, panic began to spread. The humans had not just defeated 3 major military installations. They had captured them with minimal damage, preserving valuable technology and intelligence. But the most terrifying aspect of the attacks was their coordination. 3 separate task forces had struck targets hundreds of light years apart at exactly the same time. The level of planning and communication required was beyond anything the galaxy had ever seen. Emperor Vashatai, now ruling a much-reduced Zephyrian empire, from a hidden base received the reports with growing horror. "How is this possible?" he demanded. "How can they coordinate attacks across such distances?" His science advisor had been studying human communication technology. "Your Majesty, they appear to have developed a form of instantaneous communication that does not rely on hyperspace relays. They can send messages across the galaxy with no delay." "Impossible. The evidence suggests otherwise, Your Majesty. They are not fighting like a single-world species anymore. They are fighting like a galactic power with perfect intelligence and unlimited coordination." The advisor was right. Human intelligence networks had spread throughout the galaxy like a web of invisible threads. Agents who looked like ordinary traders, diplomats, and tourists were actually gathering information and preparing for future operations. Boram Shin stood in the captured command center of Cathara 7, coordinating the flow of intelligence from dozens of sources. Her screen showed real-time data from human agents on hundreds of worlds throughout the galaxy. "Ma'am," her aide reported, "we are receiving priority intelligence from Agent Lee Sung-min on the Krillian homeworld. He reports that they are preparing to move their government to a secret location." "Not if we get there first," Boram replied. "Signal Admiral Huang. Tell her we have a new target." But the psychological impact of the attacks was even more important than the military results. For the first time in galactic history, a species was fighting not just to defend itself, but to permanently eliminate threats to its security. The aliens were beginning to understand that humans did not think like other species. When threatened, most civilizations would fight until they reached some kind of negotiated peace. Humans fought until their enemies could never threaten them again. War Prince Gexmore, now commanding the remnants of the Krillian fleet from a hidden asteroid base, received reports of the attack on Gex Prime with growing despair. The shipyard had not just been destroyed, it had been so thoroughly demolished that rebuilding would take decades. "They are not trying to defeat us," he told his remaining officers. "They are trying to erase us." His words were more accurate than he knew. In the depths of human space, military planners were working on something they called the final solution, a comprehensive strategy to permanently end the threat posed by hostile alien empires. It was not genocide. Humans had no interest in wiping out entire species. But it was something almost as complete: the total destruction of their enemy's ability to make war. Every shipyard, every weapons factory, every military base, every research facility that could contribute to hostile activities was. Emperor Vashatai of the Zephyrian Empire stood in his war room, studying the holographic display that showed his greatest fleet ever assembled. 2,000 ships of every size and class floated in formation around the gas giant Cathara Prime. It was the largest military force in galactic history. The humans embarrassed the Krillians because Gexmore was careless, the Emperor declared to his assembled admirals. He underestimated them and used too few ships. We will not make that mistake. Admiral Kexmore, the Emperor's most trusted military commander, studied the fleet deployment. "Your Majesty, our intelligence suggests the humans have no more than 200 ships. Even if they have built more since the last battle, they cannot possibly match this force." "Good," Vashatai replied. "This will not be a battle. It will be a demonstration. When the humans see this fleet, they will surrender immediately. No species can stand against such overwhelming power." The Emperor was wrong. 6 months after the Krillian defeat, Human shipyards throughout the solar system were working at maximum capacity. Admiral Sung-Ho Lim stood in the command center of the carrier Incheon, watching construction reports scroll across his screens. The humans had not been idle since their first victory. "Status report," Sung-Ho ordered. His aide, Captain Yuri Han, consulted her data pad. "We now have 412 combat vessels of various classes. The new shipyards at Jupiter are producing 3 new ships per day. Our defense platforms around Earth have been upgraded with the new plasma cannons. And our special projects? On schedule, sir. Dr. Soo-Young Lee reports that the asteroid artillery network is ready. Colonel Won-Sik Choi confirms that all mining operations in the outer system have been completed." Sung-Ho nodded. To outside observers, it looked like humanity was simply expanding their mining operations. In reality, they were turning the entire solar system into a weapon. The human approach to warfare was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. While alien species built bigger ships and stronger weapons, humans built smarter strategies. They did not just prepare to fight battles. They prepared to win wars. When the Zephyrian fleet arrived at the edge of the Sol system, Emperor Vashitai expected to find terrified humans begging for mercy. Instead, his sensors detected something that made no sense. The humans had only brought 200 ships to meet his fleet of 2,000. Are they insane? Admiral Kexmore wondered aloud. Do they really think they can fight us with those numbers? Perhaps they plan to surrender. The Emperor mused. Send them a message, tell them to prepare to receive our boarding parties. The message was sent to the human fleet. The reply came back within minutes. This is Admiral Sung-Ho Lim of the Terran Defense Force. The translation system rendered the human words clearly. You have entered human space without permission and with obvious hostile intent. You have exactly 1 hour to leave this system before we consider you an enemy fleet. The Emperor's 4 eyes widened in disbelief. They are threatening us? With 200 ships against 2,000? Should we attack immediately, Your Majesty? Kexmore asked. No, Vashti decided. I want to hear what they have to say for themselves. Open communications. The main screen in the Zephyrian command ship flickered to life, showing the bridge of a human vessel. Admiral Sung-Ho sat calmly in his command chair, looking directly into the camera. He appeared completely unafraid. I am Emperor Vashitai of the Zephyrian Empire, the great ruler announced. You will surrender your fleet immediately and prepare to discuss the terms of your integration into our empire. Sung-Ho smiled, but it was not a friendly expression. I am Admiral Sung-Ho Lim of humanity. You will leave our system immediately, or face the consequences. Consequences, the Emperor laughed. Look around you, human. We have 10 ships for every one of yours. Your entire species exists on one small world. We rule 1,000 star systems and command fleets that blacken the sky. What consequences could you possibly threaten us with? You are about to find out, Sung-Ho replied calmly. You have 59 minutes remaining. The communication ended. Emperor Vashitai stared at the blank screen in amazement. No species had ever spoken to him with such disrespect. All ships, he commanded. Attack formation. We will teach these humans some manners. The Zephyrian fleet began to advance, their massive ships moving in perfect formation. It was an awesome sight. 2,000 vessels arranged in precise geometric patterns, their weapons charging for battle. But as they moved deeper into the solar system, strange things began to happen. The first surprise came when Captain Haewon, Park's fighter squadrons attacked. But these were not the same small ships the Krillians had faced. Human engineers had been busy, and their new fighters were equipped with technology reverse-engineered from captured alien vessels. Incoming fighters, the Zephyrian sensor officer reported. Small craft, moving very fast. Ignore them, Admiral, Kexmore ordered. Our shields will protect us from such tiny weapons. He was wrong. The human fighters struck like lightning, but they were not trying to destroy the massive alien ships. Instead, they were planting something on the hull, small devices that looked harmless. What are they doing? The Emperor demanded. His science officer studied the sensor readings. Unknown, Your Majesty. The devices appear to be inactive. But they were not inactive for long. As more and more Zephyrian ships were tagged by the human fighters, scientist Su-Young Lee activated her latest invention from her hidden command post in the asteroid belt. The devices were not bombs. They were something much worse. They were signal amplifiers, designed to boost the power of a very special transmission. Across the solar system, every piece of mining equipment, every construction robot, every automated system that humanity had built suddenly received the same command, and they all obeyed at once. The Zephyrian fleet found itself under attack by the solar system itself. Asteroids that had been quietly orbiting the sun for millions of years suddenly started moving. Mining lasers that had been cutting rocks were now cutting alien ships. Construction equipment began building structures designed to trap and confuse the invading fleet. "This is impossible," Emperor Vashitai shouted. "How are they controlling all of this?" Captain Min Ho Yoon, now commanding a heavy cruiser, smiled as he watched the alien fleet struggle with humanity's trap. "They built their fleet to fight other fleets," he told his crew. They never imagined fighting an entire star system. But the real surprise was still coming. Deep in the heart of the asteroid belt, Colonel Won-Sik Choi had been preparing humanity's ultimate weapon. Not a bomb, not a ship, but something far more terrible. "Begin final phase," he ordered. Across the belt, massive structures that the aliens had assumed were mining stations began to move. But they were not mining stations. They were mass drivers, electromagnetic cannons capable of accelerating objects to incredible speeds. The projectiles they fired were not sophisticated missiles or high-tech warheads. They were simply rocks, asteroids, and chunks of metal accelerated to a significant fraction of light speed. When they struck the Zephyrian ships, the impact released more energy than most nuclear weapons. "Evasive action," Admiral Kexmore screamed, but there was nowhere to go. The humans had positioned their weapons throughout the system, creating overlapping fields of fire that covered every possible escape route. Emperor Vashitai watched his mighty fleet being torn apart by flying rocks and found himself facing a terrible truth. The humans were not just defending their home. They were hunting his ships like animals. "Full retreat," he commanded. "All ships, emergency hyperspace jump." But even retreat was not simple. The humans had been preparing for this moment for months. As Zephyrian ships tried to escape, they found their hyperspace routes blocked by carefully positioned obstacles. Ships that tried to jump to safety crashed into hidden asteroid fields or found themselves trapped in artificial gravity wells. Dr. Su-Young Lee had spent months studying the mathematics of hyperspace travel. She knew exactly where the aliens would try to go, and she had prepared surprises for all of those destinations. Of the 2,000 ships that had entered human space, with such confidence fewer than 300 escaped. The rest were destroyed, captured, or left floating helplessly in space. The Emperor himself barely survived, his flagship limping away with massive damage and most of his crew dead or wounded. As the Battle of Seoul ended, Admiral Sung Ho stood on his bridge and surveyed the wreckage of what had once been the galaxy's greatest fleet. Around him, his crew was already beginning the process of rescue and salvage operations. "Sir," Captain Yuri approached with a communication device. "We are receiving messages from several other alien governments. They want to discuss peace treaties." Sung Ho nodded. "Tell them we will consider their proposals, but make it clear that any future attacks on human space will be met with decisive action." "Yes, sir." "And Admiral, Earth Command is reporting that the other alien empires have begun pulling their fleets back to defensive positions. It seems our demonstration was effective." Sung Ho looked out at the stars, knowing that everything had changed. Humanity was no longer the weak newcomer that others could bully and threaten. They had proven that they could not only defend themselves, but strike back with devastating effectiveness. But victory came with new responsibilities. Now that they had 6 months had passed since the failed meeting at Nexus Prime. The Krillian hegemony had spent that time building a fleet and making plans. War Prince Gexmore stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the stars ahead. Soon they would reach the edge of human space. "How many ships do the humans have?" he asked his intelligence officer. Our scouts report no more than 50 vessels of significant size, the officer replied. Most appear to be converted civilian ships. They have built some defense platforms around their homeworld, but nothing that should concern us. Gexmore nodded. 50 ships against his fleet of 200, it would not even be a fair fight. Remember, he told his captains over the communication system. We are not here to destroy them completely. We want them alive so they can serve as an example to other young species. Disable their ships, capture their leaders, and prepare them for transport to our labor camps. The Krillian fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Sol system. Gexmore expected to find panicked humans fleeing in terror. Instead, his sensors detected something impossible. The humans were waiting for them. Captain Minho Yoon stood on the bridge of the destroyer Sol's Pride, watching the alien fleet appear on his screens. Around him, his crew worked calmly and efficiently, making final preparations for battle. Alien fleet detected, his sensor officer reported. 200 ships, Krillian design. They are forming attack formation. Minho nodded. Earth Command had been expecting this. Intelligence reports from Daeun's hidden sensors at Nexus Prime had provided detailed information about Krillian tactics and technology. Signal all ships, Minho ordered. Execute Plan Turtle. Across the outer solar system, human ships that had been hiding behind asteroids and space debris suddenly appeared on Krillian sensors. But they did not attack. Instead, they began to retreat toward the inner system. They are running, laughed one of Gexmore's captains. The cowards are running home to hide. But Gexmore was more experienced than his subordinates. Something felt wrong. Why would the humans position ships so far out if they were just going to retreat? He got his answer when the first Krillian ship hit the mine. The explosion was massive, far larger than it should have been. Unknown to the Krillians, human engineer Yejin Nam had spent months studying captured alien technology. She had learned to make human explosives that could penetrate alien shields. Minefield, shouted Gexmore's sensor officer. The entire outer system is full of mines. More explosions followed. The humans had not just laid mines randomly. They had studied Krillian fleet formations and placed their weapons exactly where the aliens would fly. Ship after ship struck hidden explosives, their shields failing under the unexpected assault. Forward ships clear a path, Gexmore ordered. We will punch through their defenses. But as the Krillian fleet advanced, they discovered that the humans had more surprises. Captain Haewon Park commanded a squadron of human fighters that came racing out of the asteroid belt, using the space rocks as cover. Her ships were smaller than the Krillian vessels, but they moved faster and struck harder. Target their engines, Haewon ordered her pilots. We do not need to destroy them, just stop them from running. The human fighters swarmed around the larger alien ships like angry insects. Their weapons were not powerful enough to penetrate Krillian armor, but they did not need to. Instead, they targeted sensors, communication arrays, and weapon systems. Gexmore watched in growing anger as his mighty fleet was torn apart by gnats. How are they doing this? Our shields should protect us. His science officer was studying the human weapons. Sir, they are not using energy weapons like ours. They are firing solid projectiles at incredible speed. Our shields are designed to stop plasma and laser fire, not physical impacts. Impossible. No civilized species uses kinetic weapons. The humans do, sir. As the battle continued, the Krillians learned more unpleasant truths about human warfare. When their ships were damaged, human boarding parties would attack using small, fast ships that were hard to target. When the aliens tried to retreat, they found that the humans had somehow moved asteroids into their path. Colonel Won-Sik Choi watched the battle from his command post on one of those asteroids. His teams had been working for months to position the space rocks exactly where they needed them. Now, as alien ships tried to flee, they found themselves trapped in a maze of stone and metal. Sir, his aide reported, the aliens are trying to communicate. They want to surrender. Won-Sik shook his head. No surrender. These are the same ones who tried to capture our diplomats. They came here to enslave us. We end this now. But the most shocking surprise was still to come. As the Krillian fleet found itself trapped and surrounded, scientist Su Young Lee activated her master weapon. For months she had been working with mining equipment in the asteroid belt. The aliens assumed she was just mining for resources. They were wrong. She had been turning asteroids into guided missiles. Fire control, she spoke into her communicator. You have permission to launch. Across the belt, massive asteroids began to move. Powered by hidden engines and guided by sophisticated computers, they accelerated toward the trapped Krillian fleet. Each rock was the size of a city block and, moving at thousands of kilometers per hour, Kexmore watched in horror as his sensors detected the incoming projectiles. Evasive action. All ships, evasive action. But there was nowhere to go. The humans had planned this perfectly. Every escape route was blocked, every hiding place was covered. The Krillian fleet was trapped in a box with the walls closing in. The asteroid struck like the hammer of an angry god. Ship after ship was crushed or sent spinning into space. The ones that survived the initial impact found themselves dealing with something even worse. The asteroids had been filled with smaller explosives that detonated after impact, sending clouds of deadly fragments in all directions. From Earth's Strategic Command, Commander Dong-Hyun Kang watched the battle unfold. On his screens, each move had been planned months in advance, each weapon positioned with mathematical precision. The aliens had superior technology, but humans had superior planning. Sir, his communications officer reported, we are receiving a transmission from the alien commander. He is asking for terms. Dong-Hyun considered. The smart thing would be to accept their surrender and end the battle. But intelligence reports suggested that other alien empires were watching this fight. They needed to send a message that would be remembered. Tell him that we do not negotiate with slavers, Dong-Hyun replied. If he wants to live, he can run, but he cannot stay in our system. The message was relayed to Gexmore's ship. The War Prince stared at the screen in disbelief. No species had ever refused his surrender before, but as he looked around at the wreckage of his fleet, he realized that he was no longer in a position to make demands. All ships, he broadcast. Full retreat. Emergency jump to the rally point. Of the 200 ships that had entered the Sol system, only 37 escaped. The rest were destroyed, captured, or left drifting helplessly in space. The mighty Krillian hegemony had suffered the worst military defeat in its history, at the hands of a species that had barely learned to travel between stars. As the surviving alien ships fled into hyperspace, the human fleet began the long process of cleaning up the battlefield. There were alien survivors to be rescued, wreckage to be salvaged, and lessons to be learned. Captain Minho stood on his bridge, looking out at the debris field that had once been an invasion fleet. His communications officer approached with a message from Earth Command. Sir, Admiral Sojin sends her congratulations. She says the defense exceeded all expectations. Minho nodded. Send a reply. Tell the Admiral that this was just the first test. The real battles have not started yet. On the bridge of his fleeing ship, Gexmore was thinking the same thing. This defeat would not be forgotten or forgiven. The Krillian hegemony would return with more ships, better weapons, and careful plans. But deep in his heart, he was beginning to understand what old Kethalon had tried to warn them about. These humans did not fight like civilized beings. They fought like they meant to win no matter the cost, and that made them very dangerous indeed. The news of the battle spread quickly through the galaxy. In the halls of the Galactic Council, representatives who had dismissed the human threat began to reconsider. A single world species had just destroyed a major fleet using tactics and weapons that no one had seen before. Some called for immediate action to contain the human threat. Others suggested negotiation and diplomacy, but all of them were beginning to realize that the galaxy had changed forever. The humans were no longer just another young species looking for guidance. They were a force to be reckoned with. The space station Nexus Prime was huge. It floated in the void between star systems, a neutral meeting place where different species could gather safely. The station was built like a giant wheel, spinning slowly to create artificial gravity. Docking bays lined the outer rim, each one designed for different types of ships. Ambassador Ji-Ho Lee stood at the window of his quarters, watching alien ships come and go. Some were sleek and elegant, others were massive and intimidating, his own ship, the Soul's Hope, looked simple and functional compared to the exotic designs around it. "Nervous?" asked Daun Choi as she entered the room. She carried a datapad filled with notes about alien customs and behavior. "A little," Jiho admitted. "This is humanity's first official meeting with galactic civilization. Everything we say and do will be remembered." Taemin Song, the head of their security team, joined them at the window. He was watching the alien ships with the eyes of a soldier, noting their weapons and defenses. "I count at least 50 different species represented here. Most of them have much bigger ships than ours." "Size is not everything," Dawn said. "I have been studying their communication patterns. Many of these species seem to value displays of power over actual ability." Jiho nodded. "Then we will be polite, but firm. We represent Earth and all of humanity. We will not bow to anyone, but we will not insult anyone either." The meeting was held in the station's grand conference chamber. It was a circular room with seats arranged in tiers, each section designed for different alien physiologies. The human delegation sat in a small section near the back, their simple chairs looking modest compared to the elaborate thrones and platforms around them. High Commander Veltar of the Zephyrian Empire dominated the center of the room. His four arms gestured as he spoke, and his translator rendered his words in a booming voice that echoed off the walls. "Welcome to galactic civilization, humans," Veltar said. "We are pleased to see another species join our community. Now let us discuss the terms of your integration." Jiho stood up. "We are honored to be here. We look forward to peaceful relations with all species." "Of course," Veltar replied. "Peace is what we all want. Now about your military technology. It will need to be inspected and approved by the Council before you can proceed further." Diane leaned forward in her seat. She had studied Zephyrian culture and knew that this was not a request. It was a demand designed to establish dominance. "I am sorry," Jiho said carefully. "But Earth's military technology is not subject to foreign inspection. We are happy to discuss arms control treaties and mutual defense agreements, but our sovereign rights are not negotiable." A murmur went through the chamber. Several alien delegates exchanged glances. It seemed the humans did not understand their position. War Prince Gexmore of the Krillian hegemony rose from his platform. His scaled form was smaller than Veltar, but somehow more menacing. "Perhaps the humans do not understand," he said, his translator making his voice sound like grinding metal. "New species must prove they are civilized before they can be trusted with dangerous weapons." "We understand perfectly," Jiho replied. "We also understand that civilized species do not demand that others surrender their means of self-defense." Taemin was watching the room carefully. He noticed that Krillian soldiers were moving slowly around the chamber, positioning themselves near exits and communication stations. His hand moved slightly toward his sidearm, then stopped. Starting a fight here would be a disaster. But he could prepare for one. He touched his communication device and sent a silent signal to his team. Around the chamber, the other human security personnel received the message and began to casually move to better positions. "Your species is young," Gexmore continued, his voice growing more threatening. "You do not understand the dangers of this galaxy. There are pirates, rebels, and worse things in the dark between stars. You need protection." "We can protect ourselves," Jiho said calmly. "Can you?" Veltar laughed. "You have one world, a few dozen ships and weapons we have never seen before. How do we know you will not use these weapons against peaceful species?" Dayun stood up. "May I ask a question?" The alien delegates turned to look at her. Most seemed amused that such a young human would dare to speak. "When a new species joins this community, what happens to their weapons?" "They are inspected and modified to meet galactic standards," replied Ambassador Ilex of the Centauri Trade Federation. "This ensures that everyone plays by the same rules." "And who decides what these standards are?" "The major powers, of course," Veltar said. "Those with the experience and wisdom to guide younger species." Daun nodded. "I see. So the species that are already powerful get to decide how powerful new species are allowed to become." The chamber fell silent. Several delegates shifted uncomfortably. That is a very cynical way to look at it, Ilek said. It is a very human way to look at it, Daun replied. On Earth, we call that colonialism. It never ends well for anyone. Gexmoor's scales rattled with anger. You dare compare this to primitive conquest? I dare compare it to exactly what it is, Daun said. You want us to give up our ability to defend ourselves so that you can control us. That is not civilization. That is dominance. Taemin saw the Krillian soldiers tense. Whatever was about to happen, it was going to happen soon. Enough, Veltar boomed. The humans will submit to inspection or they will leave this station immediately. Jiho looked around the chamber at the alien faces watching him. Some seemed curious, others hostile. A few appeared sympathetic, but none seemed willing to speak up for human rights. Then we will leave, Jiho said quietly. No, Gexmoor hissed. You will not. The Krillian soldiers moved at the same time, raising weapons that hummed with energy. But they had made a mistake. They assumed the humans would panic. Instead, Taemin and his team reacted like the professional soldiers they were. The humans had been expecting this from the moment they saw the soldiers moving into position. Taemin's first shot took out the main power relay for the chamber's communication system. His second shot shattered the emergency lockdown control. In the sudden darkness, the human security team moved like ghosts, using night vision equipment that the aliens did not know they possessed. Stay close to me, Taemin whispered to Jiho and Daun as he led them toward an emergency exit. Around them, aliens were shouting in confusion and anger. But Daun had other plans. As they moved through the darkened chamber, she quickly placed small devices in key locations, tiny sensors and transmitters that would record everything that happened here after they left. What are you doing? Jiho whispered. Learning, Daun replied. If we are going to survive in this galaxy, we need to understand how they think and how they fight. The human team reached their ship without losing anyone, though they had to fight their way past several groups of Krillian soldiers. The aliens were tough and well-equipped, but they fought like they expected their enemies to fight fair. Humans had given up fighting fair a long time ago. As the Soul's Hope pulled away from the station, Jiho sat in his captain's chair and composed his report to Earth. The first meeting with galactic civilization had been a complete failure, but they had learned valuable lessons. What do you think they will do next? Daun asked. They will try to force us to submit, Jiho replied. They cannot allow a single-world species to defy them. It would set a bad example. Taemin was studying the tactical reports from the fight. They are not as tough as they pretend to be. Good equipment, but poor tactics. They fight like they have never faced real opposition. That makes sense, Daun said. If you are the strongest species in the galaxy for 1,000 years, you forget how to fight someone who might actually win. Jiho activated the communication system. Priority message to Earth Command. First contact has failed. Recommend immediate military readiness. The aliens are not interested in equal partnerships. As the message flashed toward Earth at faster-than-light speed, the human delegation settled in for the long journey home. Behind them, Nexus Prime was buzzing with activity as alien representatives tried to understand what had just happened. Most were angry that a primitive species had dared to defy them. A few were worried about what the humans might do next. But none of them really understood what they were dealing with. They were about to find out. On Earth, Admiral Sojin Park received the message and immediately called an emergency meeting of the Defense Council. Within hours, every human military base in the solar system was on high alert. The age of human isolation was over. The age of human war was about to begin.